Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. So a lot of UFOs have been being discussed suddenly because of the Mexican government report, and people are even questioning that report also. So I have a very special guest who loves these, who studies them in detail. So let's welcome Ko Apadhyay. Welcome, Ko.
Welcome. Nice to see you again. And greetings to the audience from New Delhi.
Thank you. Thank you. So this UFO sightings in Mexico, now already people are doubting it. People are already trying to say that this is something not normal. And people are saying that, again, the last time also when Mexico presented something and this thing did not turn out okay. What do you think of this particular thing which they have presented in the Mexican Congress?
First, let me say that we should look at it in the broader picture of what's happening in the world, which is quite momentous. I would like to say that there are four major transformations taking place as we speak, and they are not just coincidental in the sense that they are not by chance. There is a convergence of world-changing events which we should all be aware of. The first is obviously the realignment of strategic forces with the rise of the East, the rise of the BRICS expanded group, and the growing confrontation between the Russia, China, North Korea, Iran cluster and Western cluster on the other side, with Africa and South America also becoming more active and becoming in some way key participants in the process because of their own internal dynamics. Second, as part of that, we have an increasing risk of a wider war out of Ukraine and perhaps in the China Sea and between the two conflicting blocs, or at least the two confronting blocs. Thirdly, we have an acceleration of technological breakthroughs, which is posing a set of complete challenges that we have no real equipment to deal with. Artificial intelligence, transhumanism, which is being pushed by some very powerful forces, which are basically trying to destroy traditional human organization and even the human personality, the human being, and replace it with a hybrid biological I would say a combination of biological and informational digital intelligence. And as a result, they are also trying to completely overthrow the family structures, even the nature of human reproduction, human gender identity. All that is in turmoil and under pressures from many different sides. And fourthly, and not by chance, we have the increasing awareness of the alien presence. By alien, I am very inclusive in the sense that I take into account the increasing likelihood or even the certainty that what we call aliens are actually a host of much higher forms of intelligence and biological organization, which have already merged the computer, as we understand the computer, that is artificial intelligence, but of course we are barely touching the outer rim of artificial intelligence when clearly what we're dealing with here is a much, much, much higher level. And that combination of superhuman and artificial is what we are dealing with, not only in space and on Earth, but also under the oceans. And as a result, you know that the US Congress has finally tried to force the executive power in the US to come up with the information they have, including, and that is now admitted and proven, I would say proven in the sense that there are enough testimonies and enough recognized investigations and findings to show that the US government, among others, has been holding back a number of technological and biological elements that have a non-earthly, non-human origin. That is the core of the recently passed act of Congress, which is the US National Defense Act 2023, which includes the Section 581 that is partly about forcing, and I say forcing, the US government and private companies and individuals to disclose and release any evidence, biological or technological, of alien life and alien science and technology. So the government has 300 days to comply with this, and I mean every agency of the government. Naturally, they will probably keep trying to lie about it, say we don't have anything, we don't know where it is, we have been trying to study it, but we cannot tell you anything because we haven't found anything. But that is now shown to be a blatant lie, and it has been a lie for at least 80 years. So how long can they keep that going? We don't know. Of course, NASA is now getting into the act and saying we will start an investigation and we will do research, but they always go back to the old tactics, which consist in saying we need to do research, we need to find out, study cases, and then we need to find which cases are real, and then we need to know what they need. And they have been saying that since at least 1949, 1952. So you can see there is nothing new there. But of course, now that is beginning to look very old, and it strains credibility. So it seems that a number of governments have decided that the US cannot be trusted to ever tell the truth, and that the US is holding back the information for its own reasons, which may be presented as legitimate concerns about the safety of humanity and the need to avoid a global panic or a breakdown of civilization. But in fact, the real reasons are probably much more selfish. The US is trying to hold to whatever they have and not share it with other countries, especially countries that are regarded as potentially unfriendly or really unfriendly. So that is a given. And I think we should stop beating about the bush and saying, what do they know? Maybe they don't know. Maybe there is nothing. Maybe something is there. This is a complete fraud, which they have perpetuated long enough. A number of governments know this, and they have said it. And I could mention in this not only several South American governments, but also France, also Italy, also, of course, China hasn't said it publicly, but has done its own research without paying attention too much to the US, except for whatever they could garner out of US, classified information and leaks. But what recently happened, I mean, you had this very, informative hearing in the Brazilian Congress some month ago. I think it was a year or two ago, where they covered a lot of information, and it was all confirmed by the highest spheres in the political, administrative, and military departments. And now we have Mexico, which has long been very open about the fact that they have a heavy file of alien encounters and alien observations, and that they are frequently witnessing alien spacecraft, if you want to call them that way. And Jaime Maussan, who is a journalist who has been working on this issue for many years, he brought out several findings or discoveries or allegations earlier in the last 10, 12 years. And some of them were found to be faulty, but I am very careful with the words I use because they were not discredited, and I should be very careful about it. What happened is that, as always, somebody, and I won't say where, but you can guess where, and it's more than somebody, it's more than one person, said, well, there is nothing there, it's not, it can be explained by other, ways, in other ways. And this had to do with some small body that had been found in the Atacama Desert, which Maussan had presented as being extraterrestrial. and it was analyzed by Professor Gary Nolan from Stanford. And Gary Nolan found that although he couldn't explain how this body had come to be as it was, it only measured a few inches, he felt that this was some sort of a human fetus which had some non-human features, which might imply there was some inexplicable genetic modification. And he didn't go beyond that. And as you know, the eternal sort of objection you get from certain official circles is, extraordinary allegations require extraordinary proof. Now, what is extraordinary proof? They have never defined that. So they are always able to tell you, the proof is not sufficient. There is still some higher level of proof, and the higher level of proof is probably always beyond reach because they make sure it is. So you can understand the game that is being played here. It's let's face it, it's thoroughly dishonest. They may feel they have higher reasons to do that. That is their privilege. But the fact is that they are lying, and they have been lying all along. And of course, those who are not lying are just ignorant, and they are believing what some higher up tells them. The fact is that the current evidence which has been presented at the Mexican Parliament, the Mexican National Congress, had been, according to the reports provided by various scientists, not just Jaime Maussan, had been thoroughly investigated. In other words, what these bodies, which are not mummies, but which are fossilized bodies in a bed of a particular marine microorganism, which therefore had given them the consistency of some sort of stone. However, these bodies had been submitted to a large variety of scientific tests, analysis, and probes involving some very sophisticated technologies. If you look at the list of laboratories and universities which participated in the research, you find that there are at least 12 to 15 major names from all over America and also, I believe, Europe. And the conclusion is apparently unequivocal. These are not human bodies. They belong to another race. And they somehow look very closely like what you have seen and what has been reported thousands of times all over the world. In other words, the small gray aliens, as they are usually defined, or the Zeta Reticuli, they are sometimes called in more military terminology. So usually people will say, yeah, but there is no evidence that these bodies came from spacecraft. They could just be a lost species. Yet they were found between Palpa and Nazca in Peru, in an area which is known for the famous Nazca lines, where there are very frequent UFO sightings and observations, which are scientifically recorded, by the way, including by the Peruvian Air Force. So there is, at the very least, an astonishing coincidence if these beings happen to look like the Greys who have been so often reported. So I think that's where we are. Now, somebody will always come back and say, yeah, but this may be extraordinary, but it is too extraordinary, and therefore the evidence is not sufficient. And in that way, they will try to bury it. And as you know, they are already trying to cover it up. They have not really reported it very widely. The full press conference and the full presentation before the Mexican Congress is not available online. You only get some excerpts from it. So apparently, the scientists and the journalists who have organized the presentation have taken their precautions. They have got all the scientific records of the research that has been done on these bodies. And they have made sure that this evidence is safely held by various scientific institutions so that they cannot just be disappeared. They cannot just be whisked away and then you are back to, well, there is no proof. So then again, this is where we are. And I think the fact that the world is going through such a tremendous turmoil when we are close to a possible nuclear incident between great powers tells us that there is some sort of a relation between the increasing evidence of an extraterrestrial presence and influence and the fact that the world is going through an ecological, political, financial crisis, which is only getting worse. So I think that's what I would say in as briefly as possible about this.
Thank you for putting that opening lines. The problem which I see is that now, because whenever the economy or something falters in the USA, they start presenting like another, some controversy is introduced. Now the UFO is being used, or the Ukraine war was there. Ukraine war has disappeared because Russia has clearly has a military. This UFO thing has been disclosed by the Mexican authorities. The biggest shocking thing is the Mexico presented the mummies, which is which was like a people are questioning the mummies itself and saying the past record. These mummies were turned out to be some kids over there, and but this time the ears are different, and the bone, there is a bone which is shown here, which is not in the humans.
No,
And
the
it
whole
said,
body. I've seen the radios of the bodies. The bodies are completely different from human bodies, and
correct.
they have 4 fingers. They don't have 5 fingers.
So
By the way, it was the case for the Roswell bodies. The Roswell bodies were described in the autopsy with 4 fingers.
So there are some people who can do a better job with 4. We cannot do with 4. So they can do better job with 4.
No, with 3 and 1 thumb. That's so basically you don't need 4 fingers. You can need 3 because that gives you the prehensile ability.
Okay, this is missing. Only 4.
Yeah, probably, one of the 4 fingers is missing, but they have the thumb and 3.
So they cannot do boxing then, or they can do boxing.
That we don't know, but they probably don't need to do boxing. they have energy rays.
The whole thing is like okay, I accept anything that they present actually. So do you think like the US UFO society, or extraterrestrial they call it, and they are also called terrestrials in their country, right? So they must be thinking they are there, they are terrestrials in their country land, wherever they come from, and we call them extraterrestrial because it doesn't belong to this territory. So what is the conspiracy here? Any conspiracy theory which is working here?
The conspiracy theory is that we have been under surveillance and observation from a number of species that come from many different spaces, not just our time space, but alternative time spaces. So you might say parallel universes. And we have for some reason, in the last 150 years of so-called scientific civilization, we have really increasingly wanted to deny it. This was part of the human attempt to show that we are superior, we are the highest form of life in the universe, and therefore we do not want to think or to consider seriously the possibility of other life forms that are higher than ours. I think that's a very clear message that is being sent again and again, even by the so-called transhumanists, who are saying that people like Hariri, who writes that man is this new God, so man is God and he can build whatever he wants. Therefore, if there is anything else in the universe, then man must have built it because he's the God. So that kind of vision has largely replaced the old Judeo-Christian vision, which is that man is the highest creation of God. And apart from angels, and then again, you have the question, who are the angels and what is their relation with the beings that we are observing and were observing us? But if you don't want to get into that, or you can talk about the devatas and the asuras. So in India, most people don't even feel surprised by all this because they say, well, we have always known there were devatas and asuras, so there is nothing new there. And not to mention all the Rakshasas and all those beings which are described in all the epics and the Puranas. So for the Indian, as we discussed in all your podcasts, for India, this is nothing utterly shaking. However, our civilization has been guided for almost 2 centuries by the Western mindset, the Western so-called rationalist mindset, which decides that everything which is not studied by science according to certain criteria is not real. It is, as you said, mythology. Therefore, you don't even pay attention to it. And if anybody brings it up, you love him out of the room or her out of the room. So that's the attitude. And it's very hard to change that because so many scientists and so many politicians and so many policymakers have, essentially tied their reputations to this belief system. And if you challenge them and show them they were wrong all along, they are feeling very bad, and they are feeling even worse if they actually knowingly hid it away from others, because then they are shown to have been dishonest. So naturally, their only hope is that somehow they can find a way to explain it and say, no, it's nothing of what you think. You are all fooled and deluded. We are right because we are scientists. And yet, honest scientists will tell you easily that science is only a very small section of what total knowledge is about. In other words, scientific method only applies to a certain form of discovery. And it doesn't apply to many other things. For example, you are alive, and you are a being, and you have a certain history, but science is not really able to give you answers about these things. It can only analyze provide technical information about certain aspects of that, but the deeper reality and the overall sense of awareness is not really explained by science. To the point where now many scientists are acknowledging that we may be living in a virtual reality, which is a projection, and they really don't know what is behind it. So in that case, science itself is an analysis of something which is not really there. It's just an analysis of Maya. And an analysis of Maya can be very useful and interesting, but it doesn't give you the key to the whole thing, to what is really there beyond Maya.
I mean, if you look at Yoga Sutra, and I've translated Yoga Sutra, I learned a lot about Yoga Sutra when I was translating it. And it's very simple. Like the Western science misses out the important definitions of mind and intelligence also. And
Yes.
For example, the vritti, it is one of the vritti is pramana, and which is pratyaksha, anuman, and also
also memory, which is
pramana. Yeah, all three pramanas are there.
Pramana, anumana,
And
pratyaksha,
yes,
and shabda.
So the pratyaksha is what they deal with, but according to yoga, these vrittis have to be subdued. Otherwise, you can't see them anything properly.
Yeah. And the devas don't use pratyaksha; they use paroksha. So that's another thing which science does not have a key to.
Yes. So the Western science is very hollow in front of Vigyan. So Vigyan versus science now. So Vigyan is totally different, because for Vigyan, you need to have, like I wrote in my book, that you cannot be a scientist if you're not a yogi. It's not possible. You can't observe things, many things. A microscope will still give you only pratyaksha. But there are many on earth, I'm saying, based on the Ramayana Mahabharata, there are many things you cannot see on earth because of eye frequency. There are many things you cannot see it, you cannot see across the wall. But there are many beings which is mentioned, they can see across the wall. Now, these powers were not available to everybody previously, but certain people with that yoga knowledge, they were able to see that. And then there is a very important concept, Sanyam also comes in. So, so now we are dealing with the pratyaksha data only. And if it is just pratyaksha data, then yes, I mean, you can put on any glasses, you can have night vision goggles or whatever you have, and you can try to feel it. Like, for example, Chandrayaan-3 captured seismic moments on the moon. And Chandrayaan-3 also calculated the temperature on the moon, which was very drastically different than Apollo mission's findings. And so now, again, it questioned the NASA's scientific, what they were saying and what they were actually producing data. It questioned both of them.
Yes, because NASA also was under very strict guidelines. They were not allowed to give information that could lead other countries or even the general public to know about certain things that they had found. So it was a very conditioned kind of communication, that was only meant to give people a minimum amount of information and not let them into other things which were far more strategically significant.
Yeah, the whole point is like what do you call it, the to make money. And the SpaceX now, NASA is outsourced most of their space launches to SpaceX now. Now they're pretty open about it. They're a commercial entity. They want to make money
Yeah,
out of it. Very
yeah,
clear. And they
yeah,
want to build whatever rockets, they want to reuse them. So biggest
yeah,
success they had is to show to the world that rocket can go up and come down and we can reuse it, refuel it, start sending it again. That's what they have done. But when it comes to NASA, what the American taxpayers feel, and that they need to come out with more information. And I do not know what is so much fear factor being spread around UFOs. And I also don't know whether the UFO information is being hidden because there is some separate secret weapons program going on
yeah,
in the name of
yeah.
UFO.
Yeah,
What do you think?
yeah, but then a lot of the technologies are in fact borrowed, if you want to use that term, from UFO technology. And that's what the military and some intelligence agencies have been very desperate to keep secret, because there are serious issues, constitutional, legal, and otherwise, about concluding agreements or purloining technologies from other beings without ever reporting to the legal authorities. In other words, what you have here is a parallel government which has acted in complete illegality to carry out programs that had no sanction from any legal authority. And trillions of dollars were spent on some of these endeavors, and probably led to secret space programs which have taken certain people to outer planets in some cooperation with certain alien beings. So all that program has been done in complete, cover-up, in a complete cover-up mode. And a lot of what we have been hearing about NASA and the shuttles and all those things, the International Space Station, you could almost call it, some do call it a cover-up, because it was meant to give people the sense that, yes, so slow progress was being made, and it was all for the good of mankind, and we were very open about it. But in fact, a lot of the real stuff took place in a military industrial complex, which was totally isolated from the public purview.
So Men in Black was real, the movies.
Yes. I mean, there are a lot of those movies that carry a tremendous amount of information, because remember, Hollywood has been a sort of
They disclose information before it happens.
a window for the certain agencies to give out certain information, watch the reactions of the public, get them used to certain new realities. And you can see that in so many of the movies that have come out. You remember that famous, which is proven, that in the 1991 movie The Matrix, Neo's passport, and Neo is of course a symbol of so many things. His passport expires on 11th September 2001, which is a clear sign that something was going to happen on that day. How they knew? Of course, you can say it's all a coincidence, right? Coincidence solves all the problems, because you can say everything is just coincidental. But then when you know that now even President Bush and President Trump have both said that there were bombs on camera. They have said there were bombs in the buildings, in the towers, in World Trade Center. Then you also have to think that who plays the bombs? I mean, it looks unlikely that Arab, tourist or student visa holders were able to go in there and place bombs in such a systematic manner. So then who was behind it? So was it an event which had long been planned at certain levels in order to usher in a completely different era, create an era of global surveillance and reestablish American supremacy on the level of high technology? Not only American, because I don't think America is alone in that. This is a supranational group, which may be what many call the hidden world government or the deep state.
It's funny that they release all this information in Mexico. the close proximity, the North American continent, and they didn't do in Canada, they didn't do in any other country, in
Well,
Mexico.
under Trudeau, they certainly wouldn't do it in Canada. We know there has been a leak of the information that Trudeau had been receiving from his own space agency and military about UFO, UFOs coming into Canada, and apparently some vehicles were shot down. But so he was given a confidential briefing about that, and listen, I knew Paul Hellyer, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister of Canada, and he had gone public 20 years ago about the fact that there were alien beings visiting the Earth and that he had been briefed about it.
Yeah,
and he was still
what are they going to do? I mean, they cannot even protect their own military wares in Ukraine. We all see that nowadays. That they didn't
No, they can do nothing about UFOs. Of course, they claim they have very high technologies. And in some cases, they may be able to shoot some down, but probably with the agreement and the support of other aliens.
All the natives of the world, all the natives of the world, shamans, pagans, everybody accepts, no problem.
Yes.
Everybody has no problem. But except the modern Western governments, they have problem because they want to monetize it, regulate it, and they try to show to the world that they have a higher powers of connecting.
Yes. They want to keep control. And I don't think it's even the people who are elected, because these people who are elected are actually figureheads. You know, they are just carrying out certain missions for a few years and then they are retired. The people who are behind them, who really are, you might call them the members of the permanent government, they are the ones who do not want to share the power, and knowledge is power. Their knowledge gives them a huge advantage over others, and they do not want to share that. And as a result, they are desperate to try to hide it, because remember, this is not a new thing. It's been going on for a long time.
Probably the beginning of creation. And
yes.
the people who know yoga, like somebody doing Sayam, and they can touch the moon and come back. It's very common yoga siddhi. It's very common yoga siddhi. Anima, Lagima, Mahima, Mani.
Yes.
So very common.
And you know that the certain US secret programs were dedicated to the achievement of these abilities. I mean, this has been recognized because certain papers have been published, and it was all reproduced in that whole, project that was started under the auspices of Harry Reid, the late majority leader in the Senate. So all these things have come out. They have just not reached most people because most people are not really interested and they do not really follow it. And they were told once and for all that this was nonsense. So they just basically don't try to find out about it. But those who want to know. And now I can assure you there are millions of people who know all over the world.
Thank you, Com, for telling us all these things, and for viewers who asked me to do this video. And I thought that Com will be the best person to do that because he observes like me. I also observe a lot. These kind of things, my interest. And I was very funny that this is a very known information. Many American citizens, they know it. And the whole thing is like the surprise element. So they're catering to their own people, how they have trained it up. But for the rest of the world, like shaman living in Turkmenistan, or Turkey, or in India, other places, Hindus, we're not surprised. But at the same time, now Aditya L1 is going to Sun, and we'll have a separate discussion on that, because it's just like a fly going to a lamp. So what is going to happen to the fly? So we'll discuss that, because they need to have a certain kind of mission over there. But nonetheless, they're going to send a robot, not a human. So nobody needs to be worried. Like what they sent on moon was a robot, not a human. And it has done a terrific job. Like I saw the actual size of the spacecraft, which is Vikram, which is moving. And it's so small, very small. It's like a remote controlled car. But it's doing a fabulous job. The camera quality, the vision, everything is amazing.
Yeah. Listen, with the technology of drones now, we know how to miniaturize spacecraft. And we will not need to have these big machines. Once the propulsion system changes, you will be able to literally send bird-like things, into space, because they will be powerful enough to send you all the information you want and to collect the data.
And the yoga is the best way to travel. But anyway, I mean, we can use our mind and we can use our intelligence to do the yoga. Anyway, but this technology is good to keep track. It just keeps us in the line with the what's happening in the world. Thank you, Combe, for coming on the show and explaining us all these things. And thank you all the viewers for watching the show. Do like, share, subscribe, and let me know your feedback. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.